It is Thursday, February 20th, and welcome back to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast. Coming up on today's show is a fun little trip back to my childhood in the 1990s by visiting one of my favorite shows of all time, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Really the Power Rangers series in general, but Mighty Morphin specifically. But I am not alone this week. Sitting across the table from me is actually helped me out. You were sound operator for the Parker Syndrome.
That's right.
Mr. Bill Lyons, how are you, sir?
Hey, kids.
It's been a while since you've been on the podcast. I think since the Parker Syndrome episode.
I don't know that we did one. I mean, we did one for my show.
We did like a full Facebook Live thing. Because it was the season finale, because both you and Jason were here.
Yeah, the big group, cast and crew live we did. Yeah, that was really fun. But as far as a roundtable, it's been a few years since we sat down and did one for the experience here. We've done a couple on my show on the Nerd Herd, but none here yet. So I'm excited to be back.
No, absolutely.
It's about time he called.
And
feel like the redheaded stepchild. I help you get your roundtable started by being on the first one, and
you did. Yeah, the Cheers roundtable with you and Josh. I still remember that. We sat around, drank beer, and ate peanuts.
Yes, it was brilliant.
We had to get the full feel of the whole Cheers experience. But speaking of calling, joining us via telephone is an actor that I actually had the pleasure of working with on the set of The Referral a couple of weeks ago, and fellow Power Ranger fan, Mr. Thomas Rochester. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you for taking the time to come on the episode. And it's funny because I was telling Bill that, after I did the interview with Catherine Sutherland, I was thinking it'd be really cool to do a Power Ranger roundtable, because believe it or not, that has not been discussed in the almost 250 episodes that I've done on this podcast. So
I'm surprised I haven't gotten to it yet either.
So you two were the first two that I thought of
Rock on.
when it came to this. So
Heck yeah.
And Thomas, I want you to know that Derek has your phone in a particular position, but it's also where another mic is. So I'd just keep looking over there and just imagining a ghost of Thomas.
It's all part of the illusion.
I definitely am a ghost. It's,
I would say you're like a force ghost, but that's a topic for another podcast.
It is. If I were there, I would hug you.
I would enjoy that quite a bit, actually.
I'll hug you, Derek.
We'll save that for afterwards. So let's dive right in. And Thomas, since you're the newbie of the podcast, we'll start with you. What is your first memory of being introduced to the Power Rangers?
All right, you're opening it up. Don't mess up here.
So my first memory is episode 1. I was quite literally 1 year old on August 28th. 25th, one of those two, I forget. But the one that I vividly remember more than that is the introduction of Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger. I was 2 years old, freshly minted, and I remember the intro, and I was like, who's this new guy? And obviously, when you're doing 360 reverse dragon kicks, you're officially the coolest dude on TV. And he had long hair like my dad, so I instantly was like, well, that's my new favorite Power Ranger. And I have been watching since day one. And according to my mother, I was very hyped long before the show premiered, once the first trailer premiered. So I've been there from the beginning.
That's fantastic. What about you, Bill?
So similar, it came out in 93, so I was 4 years old. I feel like I was older, but I guess I was only 4. And it was an explosion. That's the best way to describe this phenomenon. It was an explosion of TV, and I remember every day I would go to daycare called Toddler Town, and I would be there so early in the morning that they would let me watch it. There was only maybe one other kid there, so they'd let me watch it. So I watched it, a lot of it there. And then the VHSs came out very quickly, as I remember. So I had the first 5 VHSs, the first 5 episodes where they all featured a different Ranger on the cover. So the first one was the Red Ranger and the monster, Third one I remember vividly was Billy, because, Bill, and favorite color blue. I was also part of the fan club. If anyone remembers that,
I have a vague memory of that, but yeah.
you got like this box of a bunch of stuff, bunch of iron-ons and whatnot, and stickers. So yeah, again, there from the beginning, and you needed everything that had to do with the Power Rangers. You needed the action figures, you needed the movies, and
Oh yeah.
I remember oh man, we'll get into all that, I'm sure. What about you, D-Man? How'd you come across it?
So much like a lot of my fandoms that were born when I was a kid, they just happened by pure random circumstance. I remember flipping through the channels just trying to find something to watch. And I don't remember what episode it was, but I remember it being a fight scene with the Rangers fighting the Putties. And instantly I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I was just hooked. And from there, I had to know more about the Power Rangers. And much like you, God knows how much money my mom spent on me with Power Ranger merchandise. I remember I
was an only child.
Oh, I was too.
So
I am too.
So we were just like, can we have this toy? I guess.
Yeah. You can't compete with anybody. Do you guys remember you could get the weapons from each Ranger and you could actually build
the bow thing?
Yeah, build the gun.
I still have them.
Oh, really?
I have some of them somewhere.
One of my biggest regrets is that I didn't hold on to really any of that stuff.
So my birthday, when I turned 5 or 6, I got the greatest gift in the world, the Green Ranger Dragon Dagger.
Oh, man.
And it was stolen that day.
Oh, no.
And I didn't have it again until I was an adult. Until like 2012, I knew I was going to meet Jason David Frank for the first time. So I went on eBay, grabbed one, and took a picture with him. You know, he had no hesitation, just grabbed it, knew what to do. You know, wasn't his first rodeo. And I'll eventually have everything. You know, I've met him several times at this point, but everything from that first convention, everything he signed for me that day, and that dagger, I'm going to have shadow boxed as a really nice story piece.
That's fantastic.
That is beautiful.
Funny enough, the first time I met Jason David Frank was at Dragon Con back in
a rough one.
Back in 2013. It was only the second convention I'd ever been to.
Did he call the con into existence with his flute?
I like to think so. It actually rose out of the ocean next to Angel Grove. All 5 hotels in Atlanta.
5 hotels in the mall.
So a mega hotel.
I really want to make that a GIF, like when the show is over, because that would be fantastic. But no, I like to pride myself on not really being starstruck by people.
Sure.
But that's only happened to me twice in my lifetime. One was when I met Ric Flair at Pensacon a couple of years ago.
You're a wrestle whore too, so that's understandable.
Woo! It was like as soon as it's his thing.
I know.
But when I met him, I was in line, and the girl I was dating at the time, she had to nudge me over to him because he looked at me and he started slapping his arms and doing his strut in front of his table, and I'm like, I can't move.
That's cute. That's adorable.
The other was at Dragon Con when I met Jason David Frank. He started talking to me, and I was just like,
you don't know what to do.
No, you don't.
He's such a fast, articulate, and concise speaker that you don't have time to formulate a real response. You're just kind of like, yeah, Green Ranger is good,
and stuff.
And I know you know this because you had him on a show. I remember listening to that podcast, and just from me meeting him several times and hearing him speak at a VIP meet and greet, he knows what to say and when to say it. A little rehearsed, but it's hard to be personable with someone like that. But you leave feeling clean, like that it couldn't have really gone any other way.
Yeah, that was one of the easiest interviews I've ever done.
Right.
Because I think I asked maybe 3 questions.
Yeah, and he just went on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's what I like in interviews is you want to hear the person's story. So I tend to let them go.
You don't want to hear yes and no's.
Yeah. What about you, Thomas? Have you got to meet any of the Rangers from any iteration?
Yes. So I've met in 2015 at Florida SuperCon, I met Michael Copon from Blue Time Force.
Nice.
I could not remember who he was off the top of my head until I looked at a picture, and I felt like the biggest dunce in the room.
Yeah.
But he was exactly as cool as he was on the show. Very nice guy. And then I'm a big fan of the show Graceland, and I didn't realize that Brandon J. McLaren was the Red Ranger in SPD until I got there. And on his banner was him. I was like, dude, I forgot you were the Red Ranger. He's like, yeah, man. I was like, dude, I'm a bigger fan of Graceland than SPD. He's like, that's cool. And then in November, I got to meet a litany of Power Ranger folks at Ranger Stop and Pop in Orlando when I went to do an agent showcase with Anne Marie. And
how are those Ranger stops?
I was in sensory overload so fast because I had literal dreams for like the last 5 years of walking into a place that was nothing but old Power Ranger toys and new Power Ranger toys.
Oh, baller.
The moment I walked in, I was like, oh, my dream has been fulfilled. It's about time. It took everything in my power not to buy every old toy that I sold when I was 13 at a garage sale. And I am proud to say that I didn't spend my entire money.
That's an accomplishment.
I was ready.
For sure.
I was so ready. I took the first day to just chill, and like I knew I was going to be overwhelmed because I don't use words good when I meet people, or ever. But I knew that some of the people were there. Like Catherine Sutherland, I met, and she is just such a nice human being. Mm-hmm. I'm such a big fan of her. She was like, I like Kimberly and all, but she was my favorite Pink Ranger. You know, the Australian accent had me at hello.
Hello.
Yes. And then let's see who. I mean, I could grab a list and read them off, but she was the one who was, the one that I was trying to meet the most because I was huge fan of hers when she came on. And my mom's name is Kat, so it was like, oh my God, it's meant to be that we're supposed to be friends.
You're like my mom.
Yeah, you're like a cooler version of my mom because you're Australian, eh?
That's Canadian.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to go full. It sounds like Thor, and that's a different vibe.
There was it was either the second or third Pensacon that we had a big Ranger not gathering, but they had a lot of the guests here, and they had Walter Jones, who doesn't age, and David Yost at right next to each other, and they were being cool and doing like group photos because they were side by side. You just had to make sure to pay both of them. Mm-hmm. So I opted for that after getting a couple things signed, and they were like, so you want to do like the Morphin stance? Like, oh shit, yeah, let's do the Morphin stance. So we get in the position, someone takes the picture, and they're like, all right, 1, 2, 3, we're gonna yell, it's Morphin time. You ready? I'm like, yeah, totally. 1, 2, 3, pictures taken. They yell Morphin time. I freeze. And once the picture's taken, David Yost leans over to me. He's like, I didn't hear nothing. I was like, yeah, man, my bad. I froze. And the only other quick aside I have is Amy Jo Johnson I met at MegaCon, and she looked exhausted. Like it wasn't that it was bad meeting her. Just you could tell she was done. It was Sunday. It was late in the day. She was just ready to be done.
Yeah.
But what was amazing is she actually had Susie Q 8x10s.
Oh wow!
And I was like,
oh.
I'm like, because I was actually, man, like maybe I could find like a poster of Susie Q or a picture and print it out, but they were all bad quality. And her having the 8x10 there, I was like, yep, load that up too.
People forget about Susie Q.
Oh, it was brilliant. Favorite Disney movie.
Funny, when you were telling that story about Walter Jones and David Yost, I thought it was going to be you were going to yell it's Morphin time and they weren't going to say anything.
like they just flat out play me. I wouldn't put it past Walter. I met him one other time. He's a really fun, cool dude. The second time I brought him an X-Blades t-shirt, which those that aren't familiar, he was in the movie Brink. It was a Disney Channel original movie. and he was on Team X-Blades, and he was like, dude, I'm not just saying this, but I think you're the first person to bring me one of these. I was like, that's so metal.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So kind of going back into the show discussion, and we've mentioned Tommy Oliver, we've mentioned a couple of other Rangers, but right off the bat, who were the Rangers that stood out to you as being like your favorite? Like to me, Tommy was the cool new guy who showed up.
We can all agree Tommy was all of our favorites.
Yes.
He's up there.
Right.
I think see from the very beginning, Billy was always my favorite because I felt like
same here.
I related to him because I
Right.
was the scrawny nerd who would, if that situation were to ever happen, I would just run and hide.
For me, it was just the name and the color blue.
Yeah.
I knew blue was always my favorite color. And
Same.
The name thing. I didn't know I was a nerd yet, because we're nerds now because we never let go of any of this crap. But back then we were just kids, and
Yeah.
so I always wanted to be more, but like putting the Green Ranger aside before he came on the scene, I always wanted to be more like Zach or Jason, because they were more like take charge, more courage. Even Zach, like way more style. Like there was something about the Black Ranger that was very alluring, especially wielding that axe. Like it wasn't horrific. It was, I don't know, because it transformed into a blaster, whatever. But Billy, I kept coming back to Billy as a favorite, just to represent.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought, like, obviously you're a kid, you don't realize these things, but I just thought those were their real names.
Yeah, it took me a long time to learn how to read the credit.
What do you mean your name's David? You're Billy.
Yeah.
What about you, Thomas?
I was like, wait. Mine is definitely Tommy. I mean, I was a baby when he showed up on the scene. But, going away from that, I would have to probably jump a little further in the timeline and say Trent from Dino Thunder. And
Okay.
I'm not going to lie, I'm a big softie for evil person becoming good. And, he was manipulated similar to Tommy. He has a very similar origin story to Tommy now that I think about it. But his outfit, his costume, his morphing suit is my number 2 favorite ever. It is so badass with like the all white and then the red visor and then the black stripes that become like I don't remember what they become, but they like fly off and attack people. It was just so metal. He was jagged, sharp edges, and he had a similar sword to a dagger. It was more of a dagger similar to a Tommy, and it was like a feather, but it became this like super powered weapon when he went to his superpower mode later in the season.
Now, was Dino Thunder, that was the one with Dr. Tommy Oliver, right? In like 2004?
That's correct. So
right on.
It pulled me in much harder than I already was. I was 13 at that point, and I was still watching Power Rangers. That was the last season I watched on TV live.
I remember hearing Tommy coming back for that, and I remember watching the episode when he fights his previous incarnations. It was in the setting and everything. Like when he fought the Green Ranger, you had the green forest and everything. Like everything had the green tint, and everybody's like,
it's like they thought about it. Yeah, no. It was a dope episode for sure. And then him coming back, like the allure to Tommy is he had the shield, like he had the chest plate. Yep. That was new. Thomas, you mentioned this. He had the long hair. That was different. That captured our imagination of like a long-haired Power Ranger.
Yeah.
The Dragon Zord was independent of anything. Like it was just as powerful as the Megazord, and it didn't need 5 other Zords to create that power. It was just its own thing. And obviously the Godzilla aspect to it. There's just so much about that character. The flute, which I'm not sure how he can blow on the flute through his helmet, but that's, suspend belief. You make choices.
No, and I think that's the same thing, is that in addition to just having a cool character with a cool new Zord, the storyline was really good because I remember
Yeah.
it spanned 5 episodes.
Yes.
And that was the first time that like a huge story arc had been done on that show. Because
Right.
a lot of times it was just
It was one and done.
like your monster of the day.
Yeah.
It grows, Megazord beats it, and
Make my monster grow.
and then and then everyone's hanging out at Ernie's Juice Bar at the end of the episode.
I wanted to go to Ernie's Juice Bar so bad.
I wonder whatever happened to him.
Ernie?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I hope he's not dead.
I don't know.
You mentioned the 5-episode arc, and I was thinking about this today. What was so unique about that arc as a kid, I remember coming back from the Jersey Shore, going back to Philly, and we stopped at some grocery store, and they had the 5th volume, episode 5, the last one. And I begged my mom for it. She got it for me. And I still have it. It's actually signed by Jason now. But that's all I needed. Like, it took a while for me to see the previous episodes until they were basically syndicated or they reran on that same network. But like, I didn't need the rest of the story. That last episode was enough. It showed you the transformation because he was still evil in episode 5. It captured your imagination with the is it the Sword of Darkness?
Yep.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And it getting destroyed and the powers going away and just everything about it was enough in that episode to just sate you. And I think that's really unique. I can't really think of anything else that you come in at the end and you're just as satisfied as if you'd watched the whole arc.
Mm-hmm. And funny enough, that also, I felt like it sparked more multiple episode story arcs. Because you remember when Jason, Zach, and I think Trini left the show, and they brought in Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. They had to go off planet to find, I think it was some type of sword to transfer the powers from the original 3 to the new 3.
Right.
And by that time, Zed had come in. He had Serpentera, which was
bombing around.
it was so freaking awesome.
I think I still have my Serpentera.
Well, the thing was so huge.
Yeah,
it was like the size of the planet.
Yeah.
It was like the Thanos of Zords.
And I think the Thunder Zord. I don't think the Thunder Zords were actually in yet, were they? I think that was with the power transfer because Zordon was like, now you need new Zords.
No, the Thunder Zords came in right when Zed came in because he destroyed the dinosaurs.
Oh,
which I remember when Zed showed up, I was like, he's so much cooler than Rita.
Yeah, and when we got the movie, it was hilarious because he was just like they had him play it as a disgruntled husband. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, when they brought Rita back in the show, they did the whole marriage.
Right.
Yeah, they did the whole marriage storyline, and it was just like they domesticated Zed.
I think that was like a 3-episode at the very beginning of season 3. It was a 3-episode with the Masked Rider, aka Common Rider, and then I think the very next thing after that was the wedding, and it might have even been in the same arc. Because she came back to take control, and they got married, and then they went to a bickering sitcom couple. Took all the evilness away.
And that kept going through other iterations of the show too. I remember there being notions of that in Power Rangers in space, right? Like it started with them in space at like a big evil universe being like party or something, and there's just the Red Space Ranger just bombing in on their day. Like, nope.
Yeah.
Well, if I remember,
such a good season.
If I remember right, didn't Zordon's death happen at the end of Power Rangers in Space?
It did. It ended the Zordon era.
That I don't know. Yeah, I didn't know Zordon died.
Yeah. and then it turned Rita and Zed into good humans. It turned Divatox into a beautiful princess. It turned one more evil person into a good person. I don't remember who.
So basically, Zordon was keeping all these people evil. That his death was like, okay, now no one has to be evil.
Basically, it was like the Darth Vader effect.
Right, got to have balance.
Yeah.
This huge good, so we have all this bad. Now this huge good is gone.
Well, and I think you had like Goldar and a lot of the other like creature villains just turned to dust.
Interesting.
Yep, they got dusted before Thanos did it.
I'll have to go back and watch. I don't remember seeing the end of Space. I remember watching it as it was airing at the height of the popularity of Fox Kids. But I guess I was still too young to understand season finales or series finales rather.
Yeah.
Well, and before that you had, so it went from Mighty Morphin to Zeo, which I actually really liked the Zeo suits and how they had the different symbols on the helmets and everything. Yeah, I actually really liked the Zeo outfits. And I liked bringing in the, I think it was the Machine Empire.
Yeah.
It was a,
Yes.
it to me was a nice transition. Like I really didn't mind it.
It was kind of cool. I also remember noticing that all the disposable henchmen that they'd fight, putties, whatever, like they would get increasingly harder to beat. So I appreciated that as a kid, you know, like, because even at that age, you're like, this is getting kind of easy and repetitive.
Yeah.
Well, and then they brought Jason back as the Gold Ranger.
Gold Ranger, yeah.
I remember that staff. Yeah. That staff was awesome. I used to have.
I
one
remember
of those.
getting that on Christmas, and we had a VA. What is it called? A good old fashioned tape recorder, camcorder, and we recorded the 1996 Christmas. And I watched it when I was like 18, and all I remember from it is me yelling for about 3 minutes. I got the Gold Ranger sword. I got the Gold Ranger sword.
I don't think I was ever lucky enough to have the staff, but I do remember having like the figure and the motorcycle, and I had the gigantic pyramid.
Yep.
I don't remember what it was called.
The big one?
Yeah. The giant Zord pyramid.
I can't remember what it was called.
I think it's Pyramidus or something like that. It's very simple. Made for kids, you know.
Right. I recently, about a year or two ago, I found a still in box, stickers hadn't been used, Tor Shuttle Zord. And, you know, you talk about not spending all your money. I dropped like $250 on that thing, man.
Oh,
like,
man.
This is a giant plastic turtle. Why am I giving away $250 for this thing? I don't even have anywhere to put it. It's still in the box on my desk. Like, how do I display this thing without the rest of the Zords together? And, you know, so now I have to buy all the rest of that because the ones I have are like kind of mismatched.
And Thomas, you were right. Pyramidus is the name of the Pyramid Zord.
Rock on.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I forgot that it actually like transformed into a full Zord
thing. Yeah, and it was mostly just it was like Tor, right? It was just like a storage Zord for the Megazord, if I remember right. It was just because the toy I remember it like the back opened and it was just a big hollow thing.
I want to say that you're right on that. That it could fight, but it did store some of the other Zords, the smaller like. I remember the Red Ranger later in the season had his own like humanoid Zord, and they all ended up with their own humanoid Zords that would come like rip parts off and Frankenstein together to be whatever the new Megazord was. And I think it stored those smaller ones.
Yeah, that sounds kind of right. If we're wrong, I'm sure we'll hear it in the comments. It's fine.
You mentioning Tor, the only thing I can remember is I think during that episode when they went off-world to find the sword to do the power transfer, Serpentera just like crushing Tor like under its foot, and it's just like,
Aw.
I felt bad.
Little baby Tor. No. Do you think he was
turtles?
Do you think afterwards he was a little Tor?
Oh no.
Huh? He was very sore.
Huh?
He was very, very sore.
There's the first real pun of the night.
You know, that power transfer episode, so as a kid, you don't notice all this stuff, but when you go back and try and watch it as an adult, you're just like, that's a lot of bad voiceover to get this story through.
Well, yeah, because they had already left the show, I think.
Yeah, they were done. So they literally used lines from previous episodes cut together to make it seem like it was an original story, but it was just real bad, like, plot pushing devices. And when they were on camera, quote unquote, they were far away.
Yeah.
Like, you could not tell it was them or not.
I remember a lot of back of heads in those episodes.
Yeah, that's right.
With wrong haircuts.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly when they finally left, they showed like a silhouette from like the sun was setting in the background, and you saw like the original Rangers all together just in silhouette form with the voiceovers that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So they I think they just had to get as creative as they could,
right,
with what they had to work with. But
and I mean, again, like, it's fine because you got to remember, we're back in the mid '90s, and they know they're making a show for kids, and they can get away with a lot more than they could now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 20 some odd years later.
And it's still pretty good. I mean, their camera tricks, the way they used it, holds up. They just did it in like a 2-hour shoot versus let's get it perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mentioning Saban.
Mentioning mid '90s, we've got to talk about the Power Ranger movie.
Yes.
I remember distinctly seeing that movie at the so in Cordova Mall, there used to be, in the old food court, there was a movie theater that only screened, I think, 2 movies.
Cordova University, or did they both have theaters?
They both had theaters in them, but this was in Cordova.
In Cordova?
Yeah,
okay.
because they had the big Cordova theater outside of the mall where Chick-fil-A is now.
Okay.
But inside they had like a condensed version of it, and that was normally the one that we would go to because it would be a little less crowded.
Rock on.
I remember watching the original Ninja Turtles movie in that theater.
Oh, okay.
I remember watching Aladdin, and I remember watching
I Can Show You the World.
Aladdin podcast would be fantastic. I'd talk for like 4 hours about Aladdin. But no, I remember seeing the Power Ranger movie there.
Okay.
And I remember just being absolutely blown away by it. And part of it was because, and I want to start the conversation off with this, the soundtrack of that movie was amazing. When you had,
oh my God,
at the very beginning when they're doing the skydiving with the Red Hot Chili Peppers in the background was just fantastic.
And okay, so when this particular song comes on, I only ever think of Power Rangers.
Oh, same.
But people keep like, no, it's Transformers. Like, no, like, this was at the end of Power Rangers. I'm sure of it. Is it the same song, man? Whatever was at the credits when they're doing the fireworks, and then
the one with the fireworks was Dreams by Van Halen.
Okay. Is that not the same song?
No.
Okay.
The one at the beginning is Higher Ground from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
No. I mean, is the Van Halen song the same as what's in Transformers?
Honestly, I haven't seen the Transformers movies in forever, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay. I mean, I feel like I'm right.
Let's ask Google. Let's just Google it really fast.
Yeah, totally, though. But to your point, like, it was so cool because we got so many new things. We got a new planet. We got a new good guy. We got new suits. We got new Zords. We got new bad guys. And we got a new command center.
Mm-hmm.
And we got puns.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Was that before?
Action boy now. Action girl now.
I want to say that was before Batman and Robin.
So it was 95.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin was 97.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Freeze didn't coin the overuse of the puns.
Right.
Not yet.
Chill.
What killed the
His
dinosaurs?
ooze chilled out.
The Ice Age.
The Governator.
The Terminator.
I just remember it obviously felt different. Like, you could tell the quality and like production was just so much higher than the show.
CG.
Well, it was also 1995.
That's no excuse. Jurassic Park came out in 94.
Well,
True.
their live action, I mean, their in-camera stuff was dope, but their CGI, aka all the Zord stuff, was on a Saban Fox budget.
Right. Yes. I will agree there. Although I think that's one of Saban. It's got to be one of Saban's greatest regrets is not throwing money at it then, because it's not like they didn't know they were going to make their money back 100-fold. Which BT Dubs, until the last, like the Power Rangers reboot movie came out, I thought Saban was a Japanese corporation. I didn't know it was some Jew in Hollywood.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know it was some Jewish guy. I thought Saban was like an Asian-based corporation. Like, I thought that was the parent company that originally made Power Rangers for the longest time, until all the buzz for the reboot was coming, and JDF was talking about Haim Saban, and I would see pictures of him finally. I'd never seen a picture of him before. Like, oh, that's just some Jewish business guy. That's not a Japanese corporation at all. But getting back,
no, he was just he was in Japan watching. I'm pretty sure it was in the mid 80s. Yeah, mid 80s, and he tried to bring it over to America in the mid 80s, and it failed. And then something happened. I think it was 89 when Zayu Ranger came out. And he went ahead and bought the rights to that and then came over. And then he took 3 years to get the pitch together, a successful pitch, I should rephrase. And him and someone from Bandai, I want to say.
Yeah.
Put it all together and were able to get it made.
That's an interesting story. I didn't know any of that either, man.
I have no life.
That's false, sir. We all have lives. They're just nerd centric.
Yeah,
it's very true.
We just never grew out of our interest.
I don't want a life without Power Rangers.
Yeah, I mean
that's no
it's
fun.
Yes, same.
Yeah, I mean, and I know we'll get to it, at the end of the show. But I mean, it's a very important part of my childhood. Like that and Ninja Turtles were my two go-to shows.
What I liked initially was that they were on rollerblades at the beginning after the skydiving. I'm a sucker for rollerblading, so that was cool. And I don't know, just like the new suits and the introduction of the Ninjetti, and the fact that they were smart enough to transfer that over into the TV show was brilliant. It was just straight up brilliant, because as a kid, when you know the difference between movies and TV. So there's something in you that says, okay, this is just for the movie. Don't expect this anywhere else, but in kid form. But then when you saw it on the show, it blew your mind. But you wanted to see them in it more. Like they would only be in it in certain episodes. So it was a little disappointing.
Yeah. Well, fun fact, the movie and the show are completely separate.
Yep.
They couldn't get certain, because Fox TV and Fox films at that point were super separated, and so the reason that you get the meeting Ninjor and they get the power in season 3, that sounds right.
Yeah, that sounds right.
They did that because they couldn't reference the actual film, but they were able to pull certain characters that they were planning to use for the show into the movie, and so they technically get 2 origin stories on how they get the Ninjetti powers. That
did always confuse me for a long time, because I guess Dulcia doesn't get any more love.
Yeah, oh man, she was awesome.
She was actually the director's first choice, but a recast.
Really?
Yeah, it's in that documentary that they made that you watched a little bit of, that I mentioned. I forget who the first choice was. Do you know, Thomas? Without me having to look it up.
No, not off the top of my head. I used to, but
it's a real big name.
It's been so long. Yeah, that's what I remembered. Is I was like, "Whoa, what? That's crazy! They tried to get her."
And I can see it, but I mean, I don't see Dulcie any other way now. She beat a flock of gigantic mutant birds with whistles.
The Tengu.
With a
my Tengu.
Which they also brought back into the show, along with the Ninjetti.
They did. That's right. Thomas, while Derek looks that up, do you know why Ninjor was a robot?
I want to say he was a human, and then something happened, and then Zordon gave him turned him into a robot to extend his life. And I am trying to pull it out of a 28-year-old memory with 7 concussions.
I mean,
but I feel like that's right.
Sounds like a Zordon thing.
Yeah, total Zordon move, right? TZM.
So it says here, hopefully I'm pronouncing this actress's name right, Mariska Hargitay.
Yeah, that's who it is.
She briefly replaced Gabrielle Fitzpatrick as Dulcea in the Power Rangers movie when the actress fell ill on set. However, her scenes were eventually cut when Gabrielle recovered and resumed filming.
See, that's not the story they tell in the documentary. They say that they cast her first and the studio didn't like her, so they cut her scenes and reshot everything with the current Dulcea who ended up in the movie.
Wow.
That is what I remember as well.
Yeah. Because I had heard the name before, I just didn't know who it was. I had to look it up like, oh, it's her. Okay. Yeah, I don't see her in the role, but
yeah,
I'm sure she, and just like any director, like she did a great job, but
But I think other than the CG, the movie still is enjoyable. I remember watching it. I think I watched it leading up to the reboot, just because I like to tie in stuff. Like I'll watch previous incarnations when something new comes out.
Sure.
And I still enjoyed it.
Defend the crotch kick button. There is an entire button on the Ninja Megazord just for kicking in the crotch. Go.
Taking care of business. Before we move on, my favorite thing from that movie is the fact that Rita and Zed get shrunken down, shoved in a snow globe, and then they begin brooding on the Power Rangers. Go Rangers, go Rangers, go Rangers.
Yeah, that was dope. And I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention who played Ooze, Ivan. He's a very prominent actor. Yeah. While we're pulling his name, just again watching this documentary, which it's on YouTube. It's about the making of the 1995 movie, and it can't be more than 3 years old. But they interview him and they talk about what he had to go through to play Ivan Ooze, and it's incredible. Like the performance he was able to give under all of that makeup and strain. He actually, I think, broke his foot or his ankle or something at one point, and he was still going strong. Like they had to take him to the hospital in full makeup, and they had like he's just laying in a hospital bed with a full face of makeup.
That should have been on the documentary.
It is.
Oh, it is?
Well, not like artifacts of that time, but they talk about it.
I meant like actually like taking a camera with him to the hospital in full makeup. That would have been great. It would have been a great like behind the scenes thing.
That would be awesome.
There's got to be a picture somewhere. So who played him? Got him?
Paul Freeman.
Paul Freeman. Sorry, I didn't remember your name, bud.
He was also in Raiders of the Lost Ark as well.
That's right.
Among many other things.
That's right.
Like Hot Fuzz.
Yep, he was in Hot Fuzz as well.
Yeah.
You want to move into the reboot?
Yeah, let's talk about the reboot. So Power Rangers, like the shows are still going, but I know I've long since been out of the Power Ranger loop.
Ditto.
And then I remember this being announced, and they were going to use original, like not the original cast, but the original characters. And then they were going to bring back Rita. She was going to be the primary. It was essentially going back to the beginning.
Right.
And then I remember I was like, I don't know if it's going to work. This was a product of the 90s. Because I'm skeptical when it comes to rebranding old stuff.
But, yeah, like the first trailer, I remember thinking it looked like Twilight.
Oh, really?
Like the cinematography and the color grading and the feel just reminded me of Twilight for some reason. And I was like, okay, but it still says Power Rangers. I'm still here. Take me on the ride.
Well, and I remember seeing the photo, the first official photo of them in their costumes.
Oh, terrible. So much backlash.
I liked it. I was in the minority, but I was like, okay,
Same.
they're updating it, but I'm like, you know what? I think it might work.
They eventually won me over for sure, but obviously the initial reaction was, I mean, the initial reaction to anything was going to be negative. It didn't matter if they showed you the literal original 90s costume, people would still be like, that sucks, why aren't you updating it?
Yep.
So you can't win with that kind of stuff.
I mean, the fan base is going to complain regardless of what you do.
I ended up really, really digging the hell out of it, though. Of course, there are problems, and you could pick it apart all day long. But I really enjoyed how much fan service you got. Like, yeah, half the movie is them figuring out they need to be a team, whatever. But it also added another dimension that we didn't always get in the show. And at the end, we got our 90s TV show. The end of the movie, the whole end of the third act is just the 90s TV show with updated CG. We even got the soundtrack back. Like, what else do you fans want?
That brief moment when they finally figure out how to control the Zords, and it shows that classic profile shot, and you hear, I think they pulled it directly from the original movie soundtrack.
Oh, I hope so. I hope that's true. It was so metal.
Possibly. I think they made a new version. Like they updated it with because it sounded slightly. It sounded like it had a little bit more thrash metal thrown in.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a little mastering.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Yeah.
My biggest regret with this or disappointment rather, is that Haim Saban doesn't think they made enough money, so they're not going to make another one, even though they already teased Tommy Oliver for a sequel, which I would have been down for a female Green Ranger, because that's kind of what the rumors was they were going to go female with it. Mm-hmm. I would have been so down with that, man. That would have been so metal. But now they want to reboot it again. And I remember looking, because I was very concerned. I remember looking at the numbers like every other week to see if maybe it was going to make enough money. Like, dude, you might not make as much as you want box office, but what about all the licensing? You've already made all your money just on the licensing alone, probably. Mm-hmm. Not to mention any kind of syndication deals with streaming platforms and whatever. All kind of stuff to make money on with these days beyond box office. But it just blew my mind that, like, I think it only made like 80 million worldwide.
Yeah, it really didn't do that great.
Something like that.
It didn't make a lot, unfortunately, because I mean, straight up, I absolutely love it. Like 100% was all in. I give it like a 9 out of 10. My only gripe is that it's not longer.
Now, let's be clear, Thomas. 9 out of 10, period, like for film, or 9 out of 10 for like nostalgic nerd fandom?
Film. I feel like it rebooted the franchise. Here. I'm serious. I'm very much in the minority, and I understand that. But it gave me everything I wanted. It gave me stuff I didn't know I needed. And my favorite scene is the fire, when they're sitting around the fire and they actually talk about who they are, and you realize that they are just.
My mom's the best.
Yeah, that was super freaking sad, man. It's like, my mom's dying. What? Well, no wonder you're a Power Ranger. I'd kick some ass if my mom was dying too. Just go fight trees. But I love everything about the movie, except for that. The only issue, which is why it lost a 0.5 on this, is that Kim's redemption is streamlined, is a good word. I'm very happy they didn't have her and Jason hook up like the trailer suggested, because that would have made her nothing more than just cannon fodder in a way. It would be the Red Ranger's girl, and it would have made her very weak. But she streamlined so fast into like being a good person, and then she makes that one quip at the end when the whatever it is falls on the girls who were mean to her because she was kind of a douche, is a good nice word to put it. She's like, that's what you get, except it's like, no, I mean, you started this fight. Don't be mad at them for continuing.
Well, and by the end, she did own up to it. She was like, I did this really crappy thing, and that's why I don't have any friends, and that's why I'm, jumping off cliffs into water in my underwear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's weird. I do that all the time.
Well, I will.
Well, and kind of going off of that, you mentioning the scene around the fire, that's the thing I like the most about the movie is I felt like it gave each character their own backstory. Like you kind of did that in the show, but not really, but not nearly as deep as the movie. Like you felt, the anguish and why like these five people who felt so isolated all came together to form a team.
Right.
Exactly.
And I mean, the other thing I really dug about the movie was them flip-flopping genders and ethnicities. Speaking of the Pink Ranger of Kimberly, I really enjoyed Naomi Scott as Kimberly. For those who don't know who she is off the top of your head, she was recently played Jasmine in the live-action Aladdin. But loved her. I loved her attitude and just all-around presence. But the whole thing was great. The fact that Billy is a black autistic kid and Jason who is the same, he's just white jock, whatever. But the fact that like he kind of befriends him. Do you guys ever see the 80s flick Lucas?
Mm-mm.
Kind of reminded me of that relationship. Lucas very quickly going. Lucas is a nerd, very scrawny, gets picked on a lot, comes from a bad home. His dad doesn't care that he exists, that we find out at the end of the movie. But he befriends this main jock by going out for the football team, and he's in love with the head cheerleader, who of course doesn't like him back, but they still care about the kid, right? And it reminded me of that, of like, oh, here's this dork that attracts the attention of the jock, and the jock sticks up for him. I really dug that sentiment and that message of like, doesn't matter who you are, man. Like, if you see someone being bullied or you see something wrong, like, fucking say something, do something about it. Don't just sit there.
Yeah, like his quip of, "What are we, 5?" It's like perfect, awesome. Oh, did you just slap me? Yeah, weird, right?
I did like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say that Billy is easily my favorite character in the whole movie.
Yeah, totally.
He was
agreed.
And I really think it was just R.J. Cyler, the actor who played him. I think it's just him being a bomb talent bringing that, because you can write it, but it was how it was portrayed. It was in his minor mannerisms, his nuances. And I actually, I have ADHD and Tourette, so when you put those two together, it actually what's the word? It has similar traits of kids with autism. So I instantaneously, before I knew about the whole ADHD Tourette's is similar to autism spectrum, I was like, oh, dude, that kid, I totally get Billy. Billy is easily the closest person in this movie that I get out of all of it. And going back to what you were saying about Saban and there not being a sequel, Hasbro actually bought Power Rangers in the end of 2018, I believe it was. So they were wanting to do a sequel, but they are the ones who decided to go ahead and reboot it,
right,
and do their own thing. So I have my only issue. Okay, not my only issue. My big issue is that I'm now too old to play Tommy Oliver. There's no way I'd look like a teenager when I shave anymore. That's like super heartbreaking to me. But I just wanted these characters back and wanted to see what Dean Israelite and I think it was John Gattens, that they were working together exclusively for most of the film in pre-production, writing the script and crafting the characters. I really love what they did, and I was hoping to see what they would do with Tommy and what kind of home he was coming from, and if he was going to be evil, if he was going to just start being good. Like, very intriguing what they were going to do with that.
Well, and that was fun too, with the whole Rita was the Green Ranger, and that's where she got the power.
God.
So
I loved that so much.
That I hope they dip into that a little bit, but I assume it's going to be just a whole new story. Yeah.
Have you heard what the plot details might be for the new one?
Oh, no, not at all.
All right. So It
Ooh,
is. It
we're getting a
involves
dish.
time travel. Yeah, it involves time travel
I'm
going
so
back to the
sick of that.
90s. I might just be a time travel mark because I'm like, well, I'm okay if you reboot it if you do some time travel. It's current Rangers having to go back to get the power coins from then because their current power coins have been destroyed, if I remember right. Is like it's a reboot, but from what I remember reading, which is it's been a couple months, it's more of they're already established and they have to go back to regain power or something like that. Let me see if I can find it really quick.
Now that you mention that, I do remember reading something like that. So we do have some fan questions on the Facebook machine.
Rock on.
So I know, Bill, both you and I posted a thread on Facebook earlier. So Jacob Sasser asks, best/worst Mighty Morphin or Ninja Zords? His best, Dragon Zord and the Falcon.
Sure.
Worst, Frog/Gorilla.
See, I saw this comment and I wanted to defend the frog for a second. The frog is not the worst. Okay. If anything, the frog did one of the best jobs at fighting the Zords in that movie on its own. And not only that, but even before that scene with the frog Zord, he is redeemed because Johnny Bosch, who played Adam, and this was a choice that they made on the day, he played it all bummed out. He's like, I'm a frog. And then he got a kiss from Dulcea, man, who's just like, yes, like the kind you kiss and become a handsome prince. So I defend the frog. I do not think the frog is the worst by any stretch.
I can respect that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So what would you guys say is your best and worst Zords?
Why don't you take it first, Thomas? Because I'll just auto say Dragon Zord, so I want to think about it for a second.
Yeah, I have to think too on best because I would also say Dragon Zord because I absolutely love Godzilla, and that is 100%. I mean, he's got finger missiles. That is the dream, dude. I just want to shoot missiles and lightning from my fingers. That's all I've wanted. Let's see, worst. Oh man, is it just from Mighty Morphin? Right?
Mighty Morphin or Ninja Zords?
Okay, that helps me out a lot.
I think for worst, even though I'm a fan of the Black Ranger and I defended the frog, I think I'm going to go Mastodon. Because
I'm
thinking about them in their single forms, and all the Mastodon could really do was like cool you off on a hot day. You know what I mean?
In California.
Yeah, and they're in California, right? They're in Angel Grove, California. So I don't know. Like, it's really hard to pick a worst because they all combine to make some of the most awesomeness parts of our childhood.
Yes.
I'm blanking on all the Ninjetti Zords. There was the bear, the crane, the falcon, the wolf,
gorilla,
the gorilla.
Wolf. Gorilla,
frog. Was that it? I should probably have counted them on my hand as I was naming them off.
That sounded like 6.
So you have the bear, falcon, frog, crane, wolf, and the ape. So that's 6.
Yeah, I wouldn't put any of those as necessarily the worst. That's a hard choice. You know what? I'm going to go on a limb and say Tor. Tor was the worst. Tor was the worst.
That's not bad. He didn't carry stuff.
Because even Titanus, that was another shuttle Zord, looked cooler.
Titanus was intimidating as you know what.
Yeah.
I remember the episode he was introduced when Jason and Tommy had to go find him, and it was like it was shooting like missiles at them or something. It was great.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's when they couldn't get along and they were forced to go get along.
Yeah.
So can we put a moratorium that like Dragon Zord is obviously going to be probably all of our favorites and pick a different one? Well, I understand, but like Green Ranger is usually going to be at the top of anyone's list, and Thomas just had a brilliant description of why. So can we just moratorium that and just make it a little bit harder on ourselves?
I've been saving this argument for the whole thing.
Okay, go. Yeah,
I actually prefer Tommy as the White Ranger to the Green Ranger.
You like the Jesus reveal?
I liked that storyline, and the White Tiger is so awesome.
It is.
The fact that it transforms into like the humanoid shape, but I love the shot of it running from the mountains.
And it just looks like it's going to crash at any moment.
Yeah, it's I just that, and I like the talking sword Saba.
Right.
The whole outfit was great.
It was kind of a sleeker. Obviously, it was more of a hero outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally dig the White Ranger for sure. It's very much always neck and neck. It always depends on, because I do think the White Ranger looks cooler, but the Green Ranger is always more badass.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that switch of like what mood I'm in.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would definitely, Green Ranger is my favorite. His dragon shield is what hooks me. For sure. I'll say, because I don't want to say Dragon Zord for everything, I'll say White Tiger Zord. I forgot about that for a second. That is actually awesome. It's a full cat, and then it becomes its own full Zord by itself. Similar to the Dragon Zord, but not. And here's my worst. Unicorn and Griffin Thunder Zords.
They were literally...
the feet.
They were literally...
I don't understand what they do.
They were literally just scooters with bobbing necks.
I think I'm with you on that one, Thomas. I would go with them.
But in that same vein,
always lost them.
Putting a moratorium on the Tommy Zords, I'm gonna go a little bit deeper with a different Dragon Zord.
Oh yeah.
We talked about Serpentera. Serpentera was obviously badass, but the Red Dragon Zord was pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
You're
right.
But I never wanted it to transform into its human Zord. I just wanted it to stay the Chinese style Red Dragon.
Yeah.
Always captured my imagination. I loved the toy as a kid. And when you are so hooked on the White and the Green Ranger, any kind of Zord or power being able to divert your attention for a little bit that isn't a gigantic thing like Serpentera, I think speaks volumes. So I'm going to go outside the moratorium and say the Red Thunder Zord, the Red Thunder Dragon Zord.
That's a good one.
And it was a mouthful for Austin St. John to voice over. And that's pretty impressive.
That's true. Next question.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
This is actually a great question. LB Wilson, thoughts on the hardcore short film with James Vanderbeek?
Why have we not gotten more of this? I need Katie Sackhoff in everything. I'm a huge fan of Katie Sackhoff, and I like how dark it was. I mean, granted, I might have been in college. I might have been drunk a lot at the time. But that whole short was just an adult version of Power Rangers that I very much have wanted. And the only thing that we've gotten closer to being an adult Power Rangers is the reboot 2017 Power Rangers film. It's made for kids, but it's very mature in its theme, which is what I always enjoy the most.
I loved the concept. I loved the talent that was in it. I obviously we all want to see more adult Power Rangers. I just don't know if there's that particular market for it. Like, we'll never get it. We just won't, because it's always going to be for kids. But I think it was a brilliant proof of concept that it could be adult, that it could grow with the audience. And again, the premise of that the Machine Army actually won, and that as adults, at least some of them figured out that, hey, we were brainwashed as kids to fight this war because no one else would do it. You know what I mean? Like the line Katie gives as Kimberly, which was like, no one else could fight it, or something akin to that. And James Vanderbeek as Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
As Rocky was just like, you are not that naive, like you're not a little girl anymore. Like that spoke volumes to me of like, you're right, we're not kids anymore. And that should be something that we realize. The ending was dope. The ending was so metal. Yeah. Like you find out they're actually all dead. Rita killed them all, and now she's back for Tommy. So I do want to see that. Every time I go back and watch it, I'm like, okay, well, what happens now, man? Like, make another one. How does Tommy beat Rita? Does he beat Rita? Like, will he go back in time? You know?
Is it the beginning of like Lord Draken in film?
Ooh,
That's a good one.
Ooh, good
Right?
pull. Good pull.
That's a very good pull.
That's the movie I hope we get.
That would be a dope pivot now that we know Lord Draken exists and we got that like teaser for the live action teaser for the comic book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That would be a dope segue.
Yeah, my thoughts on it.
Gods.
I agree for the most part with what you said, Bill. I loved when I first heard about it. I loved the idea of it, and I think it's a testament to modern filmmaking in the sense that people can make these types of films and they look good and you can just throw them online for people to watch.
I think it was I think they went a little too far in places. Like there are some parts of the short that just kind of make me cringe. Like it's a little too much like a Tarantino movie at times. So I think if you were to dial that back and do a longer short, like maybe a 20-30 minute short, I think that would be the next logical step if they won't ever wanted to do a follow-up, or anyone else wanted to do a follow-up.
It's great to see on like YouTube and other forms of social media. Like I love the concept of it, but like you said, they'll never go full like dark, because they even mentioned it from what I saw of that documentary that you told me about. They were wondering how far do they push the movie? Do they go more violent or do they stay kid-friendly? So I think in the end they're going to stay kid-friendly. But
yeah, there's too much money on the line.
But as someone who grew up with it, I loved seeing the what if they grew up with us to see where they are now. I love the idea of it. And I thought the story was really good. Like you said, it might have been... At times they felt like they were being dark for the sake of being dark.
Yeah.
But...
yeah, totally.
Overall, I still very much enjoyed it.
That's true.
In our...
I have a question
go ahead.
bouncing off of that really quick. Have you guys watched Power Rangers Unworthy, the fan film on YouTube?
Negative.
I have not.
Oh. So if you want a good balance of dark but kid-friendly, that's a good way to go right there. I finished episode 3 today. The first episode was like, I think 5 to 10 minutes. The second episode was split into 2 parts. And the third episode came out, I think 2 weeks ago. And they explained a lot of stuff. And it's got it kind of branches off of Shattered Grid and utilizes the multiverse. And in terms of darkness, let's just say all of the Rangers are killed at some point. In terms of maturity of what happens, but it's done in a similar spoiler alert. Well, I mean, once you see a certain episode, you'll understand what I mean, and by that point, you'll know what's happening. But it's very well done, and most of the people are cosplayers, so it's people who make their own costumes going in. You have multiple variations of all the. White Ranger, Red Ranger. You've got the King Tyrannus version of the Red Ranger, where it's Gold Ranger from Zeo mixed with the Red Mighty Morphin Ranger, and they like blended the two together from a fan art that someone made. There's a lot of really cool. It's basically all just fan service because it's made for fans by fans. And the actors that are in it are all like the main actors are all stunt people, so they do their own stunts the whole time.
Sounds dope.
Highly recommend it.
I want to make the proposal here now for the world to hear. The 3 of us are at some level or another part of the filmmaking community. So I propose we do our own short and call it Attitude Problem.
You hooked me on that title.
I dig it.
Power Rangers Attitude
Problem. I dig it. And our last question comes to us from Brandon Rutledge. Best and worst seasons of Power Rangers.
Ooh, I got you. All right, so best. My number 1 is Power Rangers in space. And the reasons why is A, it's the end of the Zordon era. B, it shows us a final conclusion. It was the first real conclusion we ever got in Power Rangers. But really, the story between Andros and his sister Corone, and the journey of recognizing who she is, because he doesn't, he's like, oh, Corone, my sister, was lost. And then you find out that she's Andromeda, the main villain of the whole season. And then he's just trying to turn her and redeem her the entire season. And then the final episode is like literally a cosmic scale war, similar to it was Endgame before Endgame happened, but it's Power Rangers. And there's a scene in there. There's a scene in there in the final episode where the Rangers actually reveal who they are. But before that, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. The whole town sits out and goes, I'm a Power Ranger. I'm the Pink Ranger. I'm the Red Ranger. And they're willing to die to protect the identities of the Power Rangers.
I remember that episode, and I can never find it. I didn't know it was in. I didn't know it was in space. I thought it was a Mighty Morphin episode because I remember it being Angel Grove that they're standing on top of the building, right?
Yep. And they hop down and they go, "We're the Power Rangers."
And because Bulk and Skull are there, and they're like, "I knew it."
Yeah, they're like, those guys.
Right. That was that. Yeah. That moment in that episode has stayed with me all these years because of how powerful that was. And I never realized it was in the space season. I thought it was always Mighty Morphin.
Yep. I'm tearing up thinking about it. It is my favorite scene from the entire series of Power Rangers ever. It's just like, that's the epitome of Power Rangers right there. I have to throw a second on there. Time Force is my second favorite, just because it's similar to In Space. It's mature. It's got well thought out characters. They killed the Red Ranger in the first episode. Spoilers. But it's time travel, so they finessed that really easily. And then there's another villain redemption along the way. And it also happened around the time of 9/11. So it just happened to be dealing with terrorist themes long before the attacks happened. And it ended like right after my grandfather died. So it's like that whole season's stuck with me my entire childhood into adulthood, and it is easily my second favorite. It usually goes back and forth between In Space and Time Force, but I have to go In Space for that reveal of I'm the Power Rangers. We're the Power Rangers.
What about your worst?
Yeah, that's hard. I hate to do this to Turbo because it's not the worst season. There is definitely worse seasons, I know, but I've not watched them, so that's an out for me. Turbo is probably my least favorite because I don't like cars very much. I'm not a car guy. I love the movie, but the fact that Tommy, Kat, pretty much the whole cast you knew and you grew up with, they leave. So it was the first time we really ever had like brand new team, and it happened dead center of the whole season. That, and I watched most of it in the hospital with subtitles because I had family members going in and out of the hospital at the time. So it's a real personal reason why it's not my favorite, but it also bores the hell out of me.
Kick it into Turbo.
Yeah. Great theme song though,
which
I have a question about theme songs coming up for you guys. It's just, I would consider that my least favorite season.
What about you, Bill?
I mean, I guess best would, like, I am nowhere. I don't think anyone's as deep as Thomas goes. You have a knowledge that I will never have. So I'm gonna just say Mighty Morphin as my favorite because that's the OG. That's where most of the nostalgia is for me. However, to piggyback on Thomas's sentiment, I will say that Power Rangers in Space did pique my interest because it was the first time we left the planet, and instead of it being a regional thing around Angel Grove, it's now a galactic universal show. And and all of your characters are just on a spaceship together. It was very much kind of like had the feel of a Star Trek or a Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
So it definitely piqued your interest, and I'll definitely always dig the show. But I'll go Mighty Morphin for favorite. Worst, man, like I guess Turbo. Like I don't know, like yeah, I don't. Like again, I'm just not that deep to where I can pick a worst, but I assume Turbo because even though I liked it just as much as a young man, I'll like today if I was to see all the Megazords in a row and I could get all of them but one, the but one would always be the Turbo Megazord. So
yeah. I'm gonna, and it might sound like an out, but I'm gonna agree with Bill here that Mighty Morphin, I watched it religiously as a kid. I have so many great memories attached to it. And then I say Turbo is my least favorite because that was when I got out of Power Rangers. I enjoyed
it was right around then, yeah.
I enjoyed Zeo and I enjoyed the beginning of Turbo, but as Thomas mentioned, when Tommy left, when others left, is what got me out of it because I didn't feel that same attachment to the new characters. So I was just
and I'll tell you what, man, JDF does not look good in red. It was always so weird seeing him in red. Like, no, it's either green or white.
Yeah.
Or black. He looks great in Dino Thunder in black.
Yeah,
that's true.
And there were moments that brought me back, like when I found out about the ending of In Space, I watched some of those episodes, and then when Tommy came back for Dino Thunder, I watched those episodes.
Yeah. Do you guys watch the Legacy episodes where there were a lot of cameos, him specifically, that came back, and it was the big Legacy war?
That I didn't get to see. I remember the Forever Red episode, like with all the Red Rangers coming back, was really cool.
That was dope.
Yeah. I did watch the Legacy. That was in Megaforce, I believe, or Super Megaforce.
Super Megaforce, I believe, yeah.
I did watch that, and it was very heartbreaking that it was so...
short.
Yeah, rushed. It was very rushed, and
it was like half an episode.
Take their helmets off. Yeah, they're like, "Hi, I'm here," and then they put their helmet back on and they go fight, and it's like, well, that's not normal. Did you guys watch the 25th anniversary episode that came on?
Is that the one where Tommy has like the morpher that can morph him into anything that he's done?
The Master Morpher.
The Master Morpher. Yeah. Is that one?
Yeah.
Rock on. I've only seen clips online. I haven't seen the whole episode, but it looked dope.
Yeah, it looked really cool.
That is actually a fantastic episode, and apparently that whole season was really good. But I watched that episode.
Rock on.
They also dip around in the multiverse a little bit as well, which they don't fully explain, and I'm hoping it's because they're going to explain it in future shows and or movies.
So you mentioned you had a question about music.
I do. So, what is your favorite theme song?
Action boy now, action girl now.
That's a solid choice.
Thank you guys for joining us. No, I'm kidding. I mean, if we're just talking strictly theme songs, I'd have to go with the original Mighty Morphin, but the movie version is very close second. I was actually, when I was driving home from work, I was listening to that song, and it's still, like, the heavy guitar and everything is just great. So I would go with Mighty Morphin.
I mean, yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. I will argue that song is a theme because that song didn't exist before that movie. The action boy, now action girl. And it just gets you juiced. Like, yeah, you are an action boy and an action girl.
I'll add it to my running playlist tonight.
Yeah, dude, that's a dope workout song.
I won't lie.
Well, when I
forgot about that song.
When I ran the 15K here in town a couple of weeks ago, I added the Dan Hartman's version of Free Ride, which plays in the movie when they're rollerblading through Angel Grove. Because it's like an 8-minute song, so it virtually gets me through a mile.
I I will say I don't remember the Power Rangers in Space theme song like word for word, but I do remember that it literally ends with "in space." Like, all right, as if the title wasn't enough, you're literally going to tell me where they are in the theme song. I'm in. I'm ready.
That is literally what every one of them do.
Power Rangers in cars.
No, it's go, 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 Power Rangers Turbo, go, 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 Power Rangers Turbo, go. That's Turbo.
Yeah, it's coming back to me now. Yeah,
They
No,
so I have a
blocked it
list
from my mind.
because that's my favorite part about that about Turbo is just the vocalization of whoa, 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 whoa. It's like the best part of the whole theme song. It's a great warm up for singing for sure. So my number one is shocking, In Space. It's the original Power Ranger banger. You know, it's the first time where it's like, whoa, okay, yeah. It starts off with the countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Rangers in space.
Oh,
and it's like,
yeah, I remember now.
You know, set controls to out. It's just a banger through and through. The 4.5-minute version is even better.
Major time to ground control. I'm coming through the morpher.
Dun, 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 dun.
My second is Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, actually. Another full-on banger. I recognize today that my love for thrash metal came from listening to the Power Rangers theme song once a week and or every day, depending on how many VHS tapes I had alive at the time. My third is Power Rangers Time Force. Less of a banger, but still pretty dang good. I won't lie. Fourth is Dino Thunder. That one is a more alternative version. It's very angsty is a good way to put it. The vocals are very angsty.
Mm-hmm.
And then my fifth is Lost Galaxy. That one's more sing-songy than the others, and I really dig that. But mostly because it's like Power Rangers, Lost Galaxy. It's just, that part's totally banging. My honorable mention is, I have two. Mystic Force, only because I didn't realize they rapped the whole thing. It's a rap instead, like it's poetic, I should say. It's more rhyming. And then Zeo, because Zeo has the first instance of double bass that I've ever heard in my whole life. And double bass on drums is my favorite thing when it comes to music. I absolutely love it. You could put it anywhere and I'd probably flock to it.
I love the very beginning of the Zeo song with the vocalization.
Yeah. Zeo, go, Zeo,
Dun, 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 dun.
Stronger than before. Go, Zeo.
So
I may
good.
have listened to like 23 years of theme songs on the way home today.
But if they're stronger than before, why didn't they just use it to begin with?
Exactly.
That's fair.
Question
Plot
for
hole.
another time.
Yeah.
Hard plot hole. That's the whole Power Rangers plot hole. But
So as we start to wrap up here, whenever we do these roundtables, I like to end with this question, and we'll start with you, Thomas. What does Power Rangers mean to you?
Power Rangers. What does Power Rangers mean to me? So, in a sense, Power Rangers probably saved my life growing up. We did not have cable, and I only got to watch, kids shows during Saturday morning cartoons for the most part. I'd watch some after school when Fox Kids actually existed. But the story of Tommy Oliver having been manipulated and turned into something he didn't want to be and being completely controlled, essentially being turned into a slave, and then fighting back and making the conscientious decision to do good and fight good when he could have continued to be powerful as an evil person, is analogous of parts of my life. And to me, that's what I always thought. That's why Tommy is my favorite. That's why the Green Ranger specifically is my favorite because, you know, he started out agreeing with evil, and then love, compassion, and friendship is what saved him, broke him, and that's why he became the strongest Power Ranger of all. But what it really means to me, I say as a whole, the whole series and films, I have to go back to the code of conduct that Zordon lays out. You never use your power for personal gain, never escalate a battle unless the opponent escalates it, and never reveal your identity to anyone. That to me is kind of like my mantra for my life in a way. I tried to help people as much as I can. There was a dark period in college where I became strong, egotistical. And then, you know, I don't enjoy getting punched in the face, so I never pick a fight. God, that's painful. And then when it comes to, you know, doing good deeds, I would prefer to just stay in the shadows and do good deeds than do it out in front of other people, because I don't take compliments well at all. And that's it.
What Power Rangers means to me? Well, you know, I think, like a lot of fandoms that, you know, Derek, you and I share, I think it shaped who I've become as an adult. I mean, I have Power Ranger tats, I have a lot of Power Ranger collectibles, but that's what I have, not necessarily what it means to me, but I think it speaks to what it means to me in that I think it was the biggest thing that held my attention as a kid. And I'm thankful that it's one of the many things that has made me not have to grow up necessarily. Like, yeah, I'm 30 years old and whatever. I do adult things. I pay bills and stuff, but I don't feel 30. I know I'm just a gigantic big kid, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think it all stems from the Power Rangers fandom explosion. Yeah, that's it. D-Man, Double D.
So when I think of Power Rangers, I think of nothing but good memories. I remember friends growing up. We were all into Power Rangers. We would play Power Rangers when we were kids. I was always the Blue Ranger.
Did you have glasses back then too?
Funny enough, I did not.
Didn't? Okay.
I didn't get glasses until I was 10.
Okay.
But like, my vision was fine until like 9 years old, and then it just took a nosedive, and then had to get glasses. But watching the few incarnations of the show that I have, collecting all the stuff, you know, I remember having, I think they even did like a martial arts instructional video that I think.
Yeah, you're right. There was one.
Yep.
There was a Christmas tape too.
Alpha's Magical Christmas.
I still have it. Yeah.
Yep. I remember having that. And then the karate, like the instructional tape, I remember renting from the video store and just watching it. And then it got me into martial arts for a time, which is where I learned a lot of the, you know, lessons similar to what Thomas had mentioned. And that all stemmed from Power Rangers. So I feel like I would not have learned some of the lessons that I learned in my younger days were they not sparked from that interest.
Right. And if I can piggyback on a secondary thought I just had, you know, a lot of shows gave us those kind of values, but didn't present them in exactly the same kind of way with that explosion. But it also was our social lubricant of our childhood. Like, yeah, we had a lot of stuff from the early 90s that we can always reference, but Power Rangers was our gigantic thing. Just like 10 years before that, it was Ninja Turtles. So, and before that, G.I. Joe. So it was our social lubricant where it didn't matter what kid, like, this is my experience, like, it didn't matter who it was at daycare, whether I liked them or not. If they had a Power Ranger figure, we were playing Power Rangers. You know, if someone got a piece of the costume, you were like, oh man, I want that one too. You know, I had a Power Ranger at that same party I mentioned earlier, and it was a closed off portion of the party because it was a block party. And all the kids that were mean to me saw it, They're like, oh man, can we come in? I was like, nope. So like to piggyback on what I said, like that's what it is to me, more or less. It was the social lubricant, and still apparently is. I mean, we're doing a Roundtable podcast about it, man.
Yeah.
Of our time.
No, absolutely. So in closing, do you guys have anything that you want to plug? Like, Bill, do you want to plug your podcast?
Yeah, sure. So my company is Lyons Den Media, spelled Lyons, like my last name, and we do several different podcasts out of that platform. We have The Nerd Herd, Real Rants, and Top Shelf. Right now you can catch all of that on YouTube. If you go to lionsdenmedia.com, it'll connect you to all those platforms. And make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We have a lot of great content coming out, and we will soon be on all the other platforms like Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that kind of stuff. We'll be streaming on all those. So if you follow us, you'll be notified of all of that. But if you subscribe to our YouTube, you will get first pickings at all of our content, whether it's videos or podcasts. And if you subscribe to our Instagram, you'll get exclusive behind the scenes content. Like I'm going to make Derek take some behind the scenes pictures after we're done, and that'll be posted exclusively to the Instagram.
Cool. Thomas, you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, so I do I have a YouTube channel. It's called Life of Thor. On that, I pretty much do Thor Watches The Mandalorian Season 1. I have the final episode in the editing bay. It's currently it's in the 24-minute cut range, so I'm trying to slither that down to around 12 minutes. And I'm currently this week releasing multiple episodes of Thor Talks 2, where I go to a Renaissance fair in Melbourne, Florida, and interview all of my all of my friends that are involved with that. And coming up soon will be Thor Goes 2, where I have a supercut of the entire adventure, including parts of the pub crawl where you get to see me hanging out with pirates drinking beer. So if you're an adult, you can watch that. If you're not, sorry kids, you gotta be at least 18 to watch that. It's a little adult. If you search Life of Thor on YouTube, it may or may not pop up, but if you search Thor Watches The Mandalorian with 3 periods after watches, it's an ellipses, it will definitely pop up.
Right on, man. Yeah, our next episode coming out, our most recent one was Cobra Kai Season 2. If you kids out there want to listen to it, our next one is going to be our Rise of Skywalker. Those are both from the Real Ranch show. The last Nerd Herd episode was with Ming Chen of Comic Book Man at his podcast studio. It was our first video episode. Very proud of that. So go check it out. It's a lot of fun. How about you, Diamond?
Love Ming.
You want to plug your show?
The show that people are currently listening to. No, well, on that note, guys, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this really fun Power Ranger Roundtable, and stick around for my conversation with Power Ranger alumni and upcoming Pensacon guest, Catherine Sutherland.